Hi, this is Nancy Shanteau, and I'm here today to speak with you about replenishment and how you can go about getting replenished when you are depleted. So, in the last video I made, I talked about depletion markers, and you can look that up in my YouTube channel, and I'll put a link in the notes. And the idea is that the depletion scale is -10 to 0 to +10, 20-point scale, and that when we're in negative numbers, when we're depleted, that everything is harder. So it really behooves us to invest in getting replenished. I'll say to people who are below 0 that your number one job is to get yourself above 0. And then from being above 0, then we can start to look into what kind of stretches we can do. We really don't want to try and make major life changes or decisions from a depleted state unless not making the decision is what's keeping us depleted. Sometimes there's systemic depletion where something, a relationship or a major problem in our life is causing the depletion, and we have to address that systemic depletion in order to get replenished. Often, the depletion is a mix of energetic depletion, emotional depletion, maybe spiritual depletion, and different types of depletion require different types of interventions. So it can be helpful to figure out what our depletion is coming from. Oftentimes we're not getting the basic self-care needs met. So we might need to get more sleep. We might need to get more exercise, eat well. If there's something going on that's really stressful, we might need to address that. Now, if you've got something like a death in the family or a chronic disease, those are things that we're going to have to address differently than something that we could actually, in a situation, make different. So if you have a stressful job and you have the support to be able to quit that job and look for another job without getting a new one, you could stop that stress. Whereas if you can't quit your job, then you're going to need to figure out a different way to get replenished, or you might not be able to get all the way replenished that you would like to do because of the ongoing stress. So it can be helpful to know what situations are causing the stress, what self-care issues are causing the depletion, and also if there's something emotional, often, grief or loss or disappointment, something going on in a relationship, or your relationship with yourself, if you have internalized depression or some kind of shame. And then if you're dealing with a situation where you're grieving something, those kinds of emotional losses. And then spiritual could be anything from having doubts about the meaning of and nature of existence, or feeling despair, dealing with immense depression, something like that. So there's lots of reasons why we get depleted, and the interventions that are going to be most useful often are going to address those reasons. When we are very low on the scale, sometimes we're just going to need help. And it can be useful to work with a therapist, work with healthcare providers. Sometimes we need to get body work or some sort of loving touch. Hopefully we can find something that is platonic or supportive rather than something that we have to give too much in order to get. And so there might be you might be so low on the scale that it really is going to be important and helpful to get somebody outside of you helping you. If you're just a couple points down on the scale, it might be a simple matter of looking at your schedule, making sure that you're not scheduled to do anything that's going to be more depleting. And what I like to say is you could call in wretched, like you're not feeling well. It's true that you're not feeling well. You say, I'm feeling wretched, and somebody will automatically assume that that's physical. And if you're heading into a day where you're already at -3 and you look at your calendar and everything that you've got scheduled is depleting, why would you do that day? Why not cancel that day and get replenished and then do all of those meetings when you feel good? Because those meetings are going to go really differently when you feel well than when you feel badly. And of course, there's some things we can't cancel. There's some things we can't reschedule. But a lot of our lives are actually much more optional than we think of them as being. So being able to change what we're doing in the next 24 to 36 to 48 hours to make sure that we're not doing anything depleting, that we're doing things to actually give us energy. So we're actually replenishing ourselves deliberately and with conscience, with awareness. And then looking at what would give us the most energy. So not just doing something, for example, I practice yoga and it's very, very, very helpful for me. When I am emotionally distressed though, sometimes I can't really concentrate on my practice and it will feel depleting rather than feeling replenishing. So depending on whether or not I'm just exhausted, because if I'm energetically, physically exhausted, most of the time until I'm starting to get into really negative numbers, a yoga class will actually make me feel a lot more energized and a lot better. So that would be something that I could do that would help me most of the time when I'm depleted. Whereas if I was emotionally depleted, it wouldn't be a good choice. So we're looking at what are the kinds of things that we can do that would really give us energy. And in doing them, if you start doing something that you're trying to do to replenish and it's not working or it's taking energy instead of giving you energy, that's a good thing to start to give ourselves practice and the ability to consent to say, no, this isn't working for me. I'm going to stop. So even if you went to the yoga class, it turns out it's not helping you feel better. It's making you feel worse. Get up, get yourself out of there. It doesn't mean you can't come back. It doesn't mean there's something wrong with yoga. It doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. It just means that right now, this thing isn't replenishing anymore. It's not helping. And, the whole point of doing replenishment activities is to actually get replenished, is actually to get us up to 0 and above. So what I like to do is I like to help people, have people identify where they are on the scale, and then figure out a plan for what are 2 or 3 things that you can do in the next day or 2 days to help you get replenished. So for example, and I like to, on this chart that I made to help people do this, I like for people to identify, how do you feel right now? So say, for example, you're at -1 and how you feel is maybe a little achy and tired. And what are the kinds of things that you do when you're at negative? Like, for example, with me, I might not go to bed on time. I might play video games a little bit longer than is good for me, end up tiring myself out because I'm already a little dissociated and depleted. I actually have a harder time making good decisions to take care of myself. So then won't get enough sleep and I'll wake up tired and I'll oversleep and then I won't get to exercise in the morning, which is not good for me. That I don't do as well when I don't exercise. So that's the kind of thing I might not go to bed on time would be the thing. Like, how do I feel when I'm at -1? What do I do when I'm at -1? These are the markers that tell me I'm a little depleted. And then what are 3 things I could do at -1 to make me feel better? For, going to bed on time would be something. Getting up and doing exercise would be something. So what I'll do sometimes is when I'm depleted, I'll set my alarm a half an hour earlier than I would normally get up because I know that I might need that extra time in order to get myself to exercise, but also getting myself up a little early resets. Like, I get a little bit more tired so that I really can go to bed on time the next day. It actually helps me change the dynamic. So setting the alarm, getting up early, going to exercise, and then maybe I would choose to do something really nice for myself at lunch. That might be go and have a really good lunch at my favorite place to eat. It might be calling and asking a friend to join me for lunch if that was going to be helpful. I personally am more of an introvert, so I tend to do less well with group events. I would tend to do better with going and having a lunch treat than going to have a group event. Or I might organize my afternoon so that I can get what I need to do done and then go dancing that night. That would be something that would make me feel better. And hopefully at the end of that, I've slept, I've gotten enough sleep, I've gotten up early, I've done some exercise. That always makes me feel good. And then at the end of the day, going dancing and making sure I come home early enough so that I can go to bed on time. That combination, maybe I could even get myself up to a +3 at the end of a day like that. certainly I could get up to a 2. So usually the replenishment plan is to get 2 or 3 points of additional energy from focusing our attention on what are we going to do to replenish. And the other thing that's really important about this is that our replenishment and depletion tends to operate within a range. So me personally, I've found that I tend to run maybe +7 to maybe 1 or 0 on the scale. I don't think I even get down to 0 very often. I think I tend to run on the upper end of the scale. But I used to run maybe a +3 down to like a -5. And that scale is actually pretty similar in terms of the number of points. It's just that I used to think that there was almost like some virtue in being exhausted. And I think that that's one of the idealisms and also curses of our culture, is that we over focus on the person who's exhausted, we give more attention to people who are a little bit of a victim or a little bit hurt more than we give positive attention to people who are doing great. There's kind of like this thing: if you're doing great, you're bragging, and if you're not exhausted, what's wrong with you? And I definitely, when I ended up moving up to Nevada County and becoming a life coach, reoriented myself as part of Skills for Change to move that range, to end up really giving myself access to a +10 as how good I could feel in any given day, and to spend my time just cruising in, maybe +4 to +7, +8. That I wanted to live there instead. So we can change our range. So if you're investing in your replenishment and you only get yourself replenished to 0, and then you immediately run out and start doing all those stretch activities, you're going to get depleted again. And then it's going to be hard to do ordinary things. Whereas if you keep investing and you get yourself up to a +3 or +4, and then you start doing the stretches that really get you into positive territory, you can change your range and you can invest until you get all the way up to a really positive number. That might take some life design. That might take some redesign of the activities that you're doing, who you're doing it with, how you do things in your day, how you do things in your life. And it's entirely possible. We can make that investment. And then we also have to create a braking system around going down, not letting ourselves just keep going down and down and down and down into depletion, but letting ourselves stop ourselves when we get close to 0 and go back into replenishing and making sure that we get back up into positive territory. So I hope this focus on replenishment helped. There's a number of tools. I'll put a link to my Patreon. I've put all of the depletion tools all in one place. So if you go there, it's free. You don't have to pay anything in order to go and look at that depletion post. There's information on replenishment. There's information on how to get replenished, the chart that I mentioned, how do I feel, what do I need, and 3 ideas. You can fill it out for all of the numbers, and then eventually you'd have a chart that's all filled out and tells you what to do on any given day for how you feel with what you can do to replenish. There's our chapter from Access to Power on depletion is in there, and some charts, descriptive charts about depletion, repletion, written by Julia Kelleher, and also a visual chart of the scale. So if you're interested in more resources like that, my Patreon's a great place. You can go and follow me there, or you can become a patron and get unlimited classes, self-paced classes for $25 a thing, or unlimited interactive webinars for $55 a thing. Those are current prices, so if you're watching this video in 2 or 3 years, they might have changed, the tiers might have changed. And I'd like to do a shout out. I wanted to shout out to Jasmine Raymond, and to Stephanie Hubbard, and to Debris Briones for being awesome patrons of mine. So thanks, everybody. I hope you're having a great day, and I hope this depletion repletion video is helpful.